Ryan, we're back.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pathfinder enthusiasts one and all, this is No Direction, episode 200. Welcome to No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
Big episode for us, Param.
Woo, good. Heck it is.
Good heck it is indeed. We just had a massive weekend with PaizoCon, particularly massive for you. We got to both play second edition, no longer just playing playtest stuff. We've got our actual first, our first second edition experience. That's totally clear. The first time, it's our first experience playing second edition. And if we have time towards the end, I think we could pat ourselves in the back for 200 episodes of No Direction. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, that's quite a bit of episodes. And oh my gosh, 1,500 hours of content.
And that's just this podcast.
Yeah, just this one.
Where do we begin, Param, with the news or with our second edition impressions? Do you want to leave it up to chat? And first, we'll talk a little bit about your PaizoCon experience running the stream and everything that you did that people need to be extremely thankful for.
Indeed. The chat, go ahead and vote if you're doing PF1, if we're going to go into PF2 or PaizoCon first. And while you all do that, I will say that what some people might be wondering is that if this is your first time tuning in, we very recently went to PaizoCon, where we had a partnership with Paizo themselves and live streamed the whole thing. And oh my gosh, was that so much work? It was crazy. But the whole crew that was there really super rose to the call of duty. It was me, you, Alex, Vanessa, and Randall on staff. And pretty much through the whole con, everybody was working. Everybody was on duty. We recorded almost all the audio seminars, and of course we live streamed all the video seminars in Cascade 13, interacting with the chat, doing personality hosting, and pulling random people in to guest spot between segments. And that was much more ambitious than we did at Gen Con, because sometimes there would be like a half hour between segments, and we had to fill a good chunk of that to keep everyone engaged. But overall, we pulled it off. You can go right now to the official Paizo channel, which we were using to watch the VODs, and we're going to be splitting those up onto YouTube. I know Paizo's going to be putting it on their YouTube. We're going to be putting it on ours, and of course, all the audio of both the live streams and the stuff that wasn't able to be live streamed because it was happening simultaneously will be up on our Con Archive page, so you can experience PaizoCon yourself as if you were there anytime you want.
Well, Param, we've already got some kudos coming in. Bard Wannabe and Linda Zayas Palmer both congratulate us on our 200 episodes. But then the baker's coming for you, wants you to know that the work paid off, and what he caught of the live stream was great. He loved the video on demand, the VODs.
Fantastic. And oh my gosh, there's a whole lot of you in chat now. So hello, everybody. Do we have a consensus on whether or not they want impressions or news?
Yes, the vote was split pretty early. First vote was for news, second was for impressions, and third was for newspressions. But then very quickly, people wanted to know our thoughts on PaizoCon, our experiences there.
Okay, so PaizoCon won?
Yes, PaizoCon was the victor.
Victor for PaizoCon. Oh gosh, and then more people coming in. All right, so we will save our PF2 first impressions until after we talk about PaizoCon.
It also sounds like they want to know our PaizoCon feelings before even the news. I thought it would be one of those two, but PaizoCon impressions was
I have the
top
news
of
button
chart.
right here, and I can't press it yet.
You can wait. That's why it's a button. It's not like it's a time bomb.
So, man, PaizoCon was a hectic 7-day affair for me. I do not know what it was for you. PaizoCon is technically only 4 days. For me, it was 7.
I count 6. Where's the 7th come in? Well, anyway, go over the 7 days.
Okay, 1 day travel.
Yes.
1 day complete setup.
That was Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay.
4 days PaizoCon.
Yes.
Travel was Wednesday, Thursday was setup, Friday through Monday was PaizoCon, Tuesday was travel.
That's right. Yeah, I was off by it. It throws me off that it's a Friday to Monday con.
Yeah,
I'm used to 4-day cons being Thursday to Sunday.
I kept saying, man, we're going to have Sunday off. And they're like, no, we're streaming on Sunday. I'm like, wait, what? And I'm like, this isn't Gen Con. Crap.
Well, also for me, it's not a holiday that Monday, so I'm not used to thinking of it as a 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend. So,
Yeah.
what was the high point?
I mean, I think, okay, so there was really, I have two high points.
Okay, start with the first one.
High point of me as a gamer is the Friday night game that I had with you, which was the Starfinder game where we played Pack World's Warrior, John Compton as GM, me, you, and Vanessa in as players with Thirsty, Amanda
Hammond and Liz Lydell.
And that was very fun. It got very drunk very early as well.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. That scenario is not even officially released yet. I know it's a second season,
so we cannot spoil it too much. It is not technically out yet, but it will be out soon. This was an advanced preview. They ran a few sessions of it during the con, and then we got invited to that game to play it. And this was your first Starfinder experience, right?
It was, but I don't think it's fair to judge Starfinder on a game based on that experience.
No.
It was fun. It was completely
super
memorable,
fun.
but it was not typical Starfinder.
No.
Everyone at the table except for me and Vanessa were playing Obadiah.
Yes.
And
Obadiah!
It was a long running gag throughout the whole thing that everyone was named Obadiah, but with one or two letters off. What were you? Obapaya?
I was Obaplaya because I was a musician.
Yes. And the family's backstory evolved as we went on, and contradicted itself.
Indeed, which was fantastic.
Especially as Amanda and Thirsty drank.
Yep. And we didn't, so this was a very fun observation as the mood of the table swung into pure chaos.
Indeed. I've seen John Compton run his game with Thirsty. Like, this is a tradition for PaizoCon, and I've been in the audience before. This is my first time sitting down with any of those players, except for you. Have I played with Vanessa? No, I think that was even my first time playing with Vanessa. So, just getting to experience that and, like, not being able to keep up, which I am not used to. But, like, just Thirsty and Amanda especially were going back and forth with each other. They never let a moment rest between the two of them to think of anything. They just knew exactly what the other one wanted them to say, and they just scaffolded up to this just amazing comedic improv experience that lasted us a good 5 hours. We only got halfway through the scenario
we didn't
before I think John had reached his breaking point.
Yeah, but John was a fantastic GM and was able to just roll with the madness as it was thrown at him.
Oh, yeah, Vanessa is confirming it's first time playing with either of us.
Oh. Well, no, it's not your first time playing with me, Vanessa. We do an actual play together, and we've done 2 of those now.
Wait, you weren't on episode 0, though. Are 2 of them in the bank?
We did 4 episodes of Stellar in the Bank, and we went through all of the night before, not the night before Christmas, Alex's Christmas special adventure together.
That's true, because she just confirmed that she meant as players. But no, you were both players in Alex's Yuletide Terror.
Yes, indeed.
No, Seasons Beatings? Which one was? One of them was the name of the adventure, one of them was the name of the special.
Seasons Beating was the name of the special, and it was fun.
Oh, and since we just let slip that there's 4 episodes of Stellar in the Bank, Descriptionist is quite hype for that.
Oh, yeah. Look forward to that very soon. But give Vanessa time to rest. Amanda Hammond is also on that podcast. It's wonderful.
I am going to follow up on what we're talking about playing with network members. I think that's something I've taken for granted as something I can do at cons. And so this year I played, like, almost every single game that I played had at least 1 or 2 network members in it. Not in the Delve, and not a card game that I played with with Rachel Ventura of Legendary Games. But otherwise, all of my sit-down full role-playing sessions had you, Randall, Vanessa, or Luis at them, and my PaizoCon was better for it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most me and you have got to play together at a con too. Almost every game I played with you. I played the Delve with Alex, and the rest I played with you.
Let's talk about the Delves really quick then.
Okay, the Delves.
Which Delves did you play?
I didn't play the Starfinder Delves because it was a beginner box, and I'm already very familiar with Starfinder. But I did play the Pathfinder 2 Delve, which was an exercise in dying.
Oh, that's right. Luis even pointed out they were putting stickers where people died, and he pointed out where your and Alex's corpses were.
Indeed. It was a lot like the first delve that we played last year of the playtest, and I think that was intentional. But with updated versions of the characters, we fought a couple, an ogre and a couple of bugbears, and once we had become victorious at that, the spawn of Lamashtu wiped the floor of us. And that was a good way to learn both the changes in the system and how the new death and dying rules work, which actually were much easier to understand now that I've gotten to experience them firsthand.
Wait, we're getting dangerously close to talking about second edition. That's going to be a full dedicated segment.
No.
I also played in that. I played in that delve, but I stopped after the 2 bugbear fight. I was playing Sela, who I had played the previous year. I believe that's not who I was playing when Jason Bowman ran me. So it must have been when one of the other times I sat at the delve table. I found that the Paladin played very similar to how it played last year,
right?
Which I don't object to. In fact, the delves that I played last year were perfectly fine. I know people know that I've had mixed feelings about 2E, but the play experience at PaizoCon was some of the highlights of that.
Indeed.
I also played in the Starfinder delve, and I told this story on the Twitch stream, but for those who missed it, we were fighting against a monster that I made some kind of knowledge check, I think a science check, to figure out he was standing in flammable goo.
Oh, well, that's fun.
Our engineer blasted the goo with a blowtorch and missed the ground.
As you do.
So on my turn, I asked for the blowtorch. He refused to give it to me, so I picked him up. He was an Ahsoki, and I wielded the Ahsoki and blasted the ground and missed. And so Obadiah was across the room, so I tossed the Ahsoki to her. She grabbed it and missed. And then I think finally our what's the martial type character, the leader type?
The soldier? Oh, the envoy.
Yes, our envoy finally took the Ahsoki flamethrower from him, pointed it on the ground, blasted the creature, did 2 points of fire damage.
It was worth it. 4 turns well spent.
Descriptionist is asking AC 5. I was told AC 10. Maybe it was 5. Anyway, we were rolling low single digits. It was quite it was quite a sight. We did eventually kill this monster, but boy, was that thing tougher than it probably should have been.
Yeah, I did not get to play the Starfinder delve, but it sounds like I really should have been in your table.
Oh yeah, Kate Baker was in that table too, so that was fun.
I only got to meet Kate briefly. Because we were so busy, there were so many people I didn't get to hang out with this year that I really wanted to. When I got there, actually, my PaizoCon day -1, not even day 0. Thankfully, Owen took me, and Owen and LJ picked me up and drove me to the AFK Tavern with Alex, where I got to have dinner and hang out there with the Paizo crew and a bunch of fans of Paizo, and it was glorious.
I have been to AFK once. It was a few years ago. I went with Anthony Lee, formerly of our network, Jim Groves, adventure writer, and Jim Groves' wife. And that was a really nice experience. And it was the same situation. I arrived early enough the day before PaizoCon that I was able to make supper plans. I remember Anthony commenting that on the drive over, it felt like he was sitting in on a private episode of No Direction where I was interviewing Jim Groves.
And, that would be a great episode. Too bad you didn't have a tape recorder.
I know.
We're not allowed to go anywhere from now on without a tape recorder.
I mean, technically, with my smartphone, I don't go anywhere without a tape recorder.
You know, that is right. That's basically how Gen Con 2015 happened.
There you go. People are asking about trivia in chat, so I'm okay switching over to trivia and then getting back to other games we played.
All right.
Trivia comes after the banquet. It has become a high point of PaizoCon for me.
Right.
What were your impressions of it this year?
This year was a lot harder because it was split, because Paizo encompasses all things Paizo, which means that it now encompasses card game questions and Starfinder questions. And between that and the obscure Pathfinder and Galarian questions, it's too much. It's too much to keep in one brain. So there was a lot, the scores were a lot lower this year across the board.
One of the things I enjoy is when we know we don't have the question right and we just troll John Compton, who's running the trivia contest. This year, I think had enough confidence that we could maybe guess some of the questions, that we were rarely doing those joke questions. And so like the fact that we actually had a chance of winning this year, I think took away from the overall fun of it. It was still a fun experience, but man, in the past, this has been like a raucous good time.
Right. And also it seemed pointless to troll answers when Serenray After Dark was basically the team of the troll answers and would dominate that competition any day of the week.
Well, there were two totally troll teams. What was the other one? Straight Out of John Compton?
Yes, Straight Out of John Compton and Serenray After Dark. And we were Tanya's disappointments.
Yes. We did start strong. I was really happy with how the table came together for the first one, because it was asking what Liz Lydell's cosplay was at Gen Con.
Right.
And I knew it was a Starfinder cosplayer. Basically, everyone did, or it was part of the question. And so the Starfinder people were speaking up, and they narrowed it down to, it's probably this faction. And then I just chimed in. It's like, I remember this cosplay. It was a blue costume with a big gun, and that immediately eliminated the thing we'd narrowed it down to. And so we revised our answers to the stewards, which ended up being the right answer. And so we started hot. We really kicked off that first round, which is asking about Paizo staff, which is kind of our specialty. So we always have a great first round. And then we slowly deteriorate to the point that fourth round, again, this year was our lowest. This year we got 0 that round.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and completely bumping us out of contention.
It went down to a tiebreaker between the top two teams, and Viva Cadrical, as V is telling us in chat, won it.
Fourth round was an embarrassment, she said. Now she's not just judging us. She was also on our team. I did enjoy that one of the questions was to name an NPC in an adventure that she wrote.
We got that one right.
Yes, we did. Thank goodness.
All right. And beyond that was a whole lot of gaming well, it was a whole lot of recording, but you all have know enough about that experience.
Oops. So we've talked about the Delves, we've talked about trivia, we've talked about John Compton's Starfinder game. I will briefly talk about that Legendary Games card game that I played, because I'm just going to go through all the different all the different games I played. I was just walking down the hall and I saw that Rachel Ventura was running a game for 2 people. So I said if she had an open spot, I was willing to play, which she did. And that's one of the fun things about PaizoCon, is that you get all of these really cool exclusive games in the lottery. And a lot of people get whatever games they believe they can come into. But once you arrive at PaizoCon, you realize just how the schedule is different from how you expected it to be. You might get more tired. You might stay up later than you expected to, because it's a very social event. And there's a bar right there on site, and almost everyone is staying in the hotel. So people can stay as late as possible and stumble up to their room and be fine. So a lot of the times the events won't have as many people as are signed up for it. So if you are just in the right place at the right time, you can get into these really cool exclusive games just by being there. So Fates of Madness is a card game that is kind of a transition point from role-playing games, which Legendary Games is known for, and tabletop board games, and vice versa. So the idea is that they're using a lot of Legendary Games art assets, which are excellent. A lot of these were Hugo Solis character art. So using those to really add production value to it without any cost, because Legendary Games already owns those, to play just a very basic dungeon delve, where you're working it's a cooperative game. You're working together to fight monsters, collect treasure, the things you would expect in like kind of a simplified version of a role-playing game. And there's optional storytelling involved, but that's we started with it, and then we just kind of got more into the card game element of it.
I saw them basically pitching this or showing off what it would be last year. Is this the year it came out?
Yes, it came. I think they had it at Gen Con. They either had a preview copy or a full production copy at Gen Con.
Okay. I didn't see it at Gen Con, but I did see it at their booth at PaizoCon last year, and was really curious because, you know, I love Legendary, but they're traditionally thought of as a third-party crew. They publish works for Starfinder, Pathfinder, 5th edition, and I've never seen a third-party crew go out for their own game like this before.
They've got a couple of card games at this point, or at least the second one is in development. This is something they didn't do it in-house. This is something they've licensed, and are it's very similar to how they work with most of the freelancers for the adventures and the other RPG supplements they write. But this one happens to be a card game, and card games are not that expensive to manufacture, so it's a good transition for the company as well to get into the tabletop, like the other side of the tabletop hobby. And it being something that could encourage people who are into board games to play role-playing games means that in the end, it also serves as like a market point for them, which, you know, their URL and their branding is all over this board game. So they might be the first role-playing game experience of somebody that's traditionally a card game player.
And oh yeah, and they have all that art they have licensed too. That makes the card game a lot easier to make, because that's the most expensive part about making a card game is the ridiculous amount of art you have to buy.
Yeah, and their art is quite pretty.
Yes, they do some. They have some of the best looking books in the industry, which is why I guess Paizo tapped them to help them with Kingmaker. They do such a good job.
The other game I played that wasn't a role-playing game was Skulls. So the Glass Cannon podcast was there, and they had their own room. And in that room, they had a board game library. So at one point, I had some free time. I passed by, and Skulls is a very cool deduction game where you get a hand of 4 cards, and 3 of them are flowers. One of them is a skull. You play a card face down, and then you go around the table either playing a card or betting how many cards you can flip before you find a skull. And it's just a cool, simple social deduction game that people were really getting into, because like if you have any intent to bet this round, then you don't put any skulls in front of you, but you want to do that in a way that doesn't give away that you actually had intention to bet. And when it goes around, you raise. So if I say, you know what, I think I can flip 2 cards without getting any skulls this round, goes to the next person, and they say 3, and then it goes around the table back to me, and I pass. The person who bet 3 might choose me as one of the people whose cards they flip over, because if I was the first person to bet, then obviously I don't have skulls. But was that my play, Param? That might have been my play, especially because I went so low. So it would be a good icebreaker game for any game night. And it's not a game I've ever heard of, which I am not used to. I at least usually have a passing familiarity with titles, but this was a brand new game for me. It's got a cool like a sugar skull motif, so a very Mexican influence. And it's a game I do plan on picking up, even though at this point I have plenty of board games. But I can see myself and my gaming group really enjoying this one.
Well, I mean, this can't take up much space. We're talking 4 cards per player. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a small box. Next, we have my first role-playing game on the list, other than the ones we've already talked about, and that is Luis's Worldwide Wrestling RPG. Now, by Luis, I mean he ran it. He didn't publish this. This is a published wrestling RPG. And I am a wrestling fan, and so is Luis. Randall was also in this game, and he is not a wrestling fan, but it was set in Galarian, so Luis allowed us to do things like cast prestidigitation to add pyro and stuff to our entrances, and possibly cast spells so that we're not just flipping during our matches, but actually flying. And so Randall was able to use that to kind of get an idea of how wrestling works. And the third player was a lady named Ryan. So there was Ryan, and Randall was not Ryan. And she didn't seem like she was a wrestling fan either, but she really got into it because it is not a combat simulator like most wrestling games. It is a storytelling simulator. And we are not playing wrestlers. We are playing performers who are performing as wrestlers. So on my turn, I don't roll to body slam. I dictate a string of moves together and try and make a point as far as the story goes. So, for example, at the beginning of the game, you establish our relationship with each other. So other Ryan was playing a grizzled vet. That was her class. And I was playing the golden boy, and Randall was playing like a high flyer. And so through these questions, we established that she was a veteran. Randall was her former protege. I'm her new protege. And that even though Randall dislikes me for kind of stealing his mentor, I would never betray Randall. And so she and I had a match. And so mentor protege. And she was doing moves that were very much like safe for her, not spectacular because she's older, her knees aren't quite great. And so I was then doing moves that emphasize that I'm young, I'm athletic, I'm doing backflips and stuff. So the point wasn't I hit her with a backflip. The point was I can do a backflip. That's the story I'm telling. And what element of the story you're telling dictates whether you're playing to the audience and therefore roll heat, whether you're playing up your skill set and therefore roll your role. It's a really interesting way of running stats and running an RPG. I've never seen it before. It's probably something that if I tried to do a long-term campaign, I would get annoyed with some of the finicky nuances. But I do think that as like a jumping on point to probably customize to my tastes, there's a lot there. And I might end up picking up Worldwide Wrestling, the RPG.
This really seems interesting. I hate to admit it, I have zero interest in wrestling whatsoever. But I do enjoy hearing about the different takes in RPGs over the years and how it's been done.
So one of the highlights is during our match. At one point, Luis, who plays the GM, is called the creative, and so he's the writer room, and he tells us. So I am booked to win. Ryan is booked to win, and she decides to, as a performer, screw me over and do like win the match anyway. And so that's something you can do, and then like I have to like recover from that while being aware that we're in front of a live audience and I, the performer, am personally pissed off at her, the performer, but our characters have a different relationship. It's like there's an amazing amount of depth for a storytelling wrestling game.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, go ahead.
It's the meta. You're playing a role that's playing a role. That's always difficult.
Speaking of storytelling, there was the first night, actually, night -1, Luis and I and you and Randall were sitting down and we were talking about the game, the bounty hunter type character that I was making for Will's game. My friend Will, he was asking for advice on how to adjust encounters, and going back and forth, we decided he would have a bounty hunter that's hunting the party, and anytime an encounter looked like it was going too easy, he could just have this bounty hunter show up, even the odds a little bit, add a little bit of long-term storytelling, have this bounty hunter leave whenever things started to, like the tide started to turn. So I was talking about how I went to our Discord channel, asked for advice on some items and stuff for the build, which I decided would be like a gunslinger monk, without putting together that I was designing John Wick.
Oh, no.
So one of the items that was recommended to me was just linked. He didn't give me the name of it. I can't look up who recommended it right now. But on the Archives of Nethys, the link it ends with monkey-belt. So I just had on my list of things to look into the monkey belt. And Luis, who designed the belt, it didn't have monkey-belt. It had belt-monkey. And so I was looking up the belt monkey, and Luis designed it, and he said it's belt, monkey. It's a monkey belt. So my character ended up in the Worldwide Wrestling game, ended up being Monombre, which is a composite of mono, monkey, and hombre, man. And he came to the ring with a belt with a monkey tail coming off of it. So that was his monkey belt. He also came to the ring with a pet monkey who would look after his belt while he was wrestling. And that pet monkey's name was Belt Monkey.
Oh, that's why we had the conversation of 1,001 belt monkeys.
Yes. Oh, you missed how that whole thing started.
I was just like, monkeys are cool.
So I enjoyed Monombre so much. Like I don't think I have it here. I made a logo for him. I designed his mask, which is like a black mask with brown hands over the eyes, over the mouth, and over the ears.
But you had seeing, speaking of, like,
he had eye holes, but
was
it's
it
like
just a leather?
See no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil.
Well,
monkeys.
that's cheating.
Fine, I cheat then. But yeah, I liked him so much that I am replacing my Curse of the Crimson Throne character with a vigilante brawler named Monombre, and it's going to be the exact same character, played the exact same way. And I was talking with Vanessa and Luis about the best unarmed grappling version of a vigilante. And if people might have seen on Facebook today that I was looking for a cheap penny whistle, so that I could have just blow a penny whistle whenever he's about to show up in a scene in his vigilante identity, which is by far the weirdest thing I have ever done as an accoutrement for one of my characters. But I am very much looking forward to it.
This is even stranger than the kangaroo.
Oh, yeah. The kangaroo is just taking an option from Pathfinder. This is bringing a musical instrument in to give myself a little entrance music every time I show up.
Fair. And the next game on your list is something me and you both did. We got to play Fangwood Keep as converted.
Once again, GM'd by Luis.
Indeed, GM'd by Luis. Luis, thank you. You were our secret embedded No Direction member who also helped make this con awesome. Also, you helped make this con awesome for hundreds of Paizo fans that attended while working in a blue shirt. But you had a secret
once again,
black
without
shirt
going
all
too
along.
deep. Once again, without going too deep into the two-iness of it, what were your thoughts on Luis's conversion of Fangwood Keep? Which was originally a Pathfinder module written by Alex Greenshields. Sorry, go ahead.
It sounded like it converted easily, so that was good to hear. The treasure was funny because I'm going to talk about it as a conversion, at least. Because one of the things that Pathfinder 2 does is it basically makes money worth 10 times more than it used to be. So you need to cut a 0 off of the end of any treasures. But Luis just ran it as is because why not? So we were getting what would have been fortunes for low level characters for in PF2 for very simple adventuring. But it seemed like the monsters were the challenge they were supposed to be when substituted into the adventure. So that was nice. We were both dead tired at that point, and we were really giving it our all, gang. We actually were going to maybe release a recording of it, but you do not want that audio. You do not want that audio at all. It is very boring and filled with long silences.
Jason Keeley sat in with us on that game, we should mention.
Yes, I forgot. Jason Keeley was there, and Randall was the 4th player.
This is where we discovered that Randall in real life, I think, is a jewel thief.
Yeah, I'm scared of Randall now.
Randall was playing
scared.
a rogue, and just the little bits of ideas he had, like putting a crowbar at a trapdoor that he didn't intend to use so that he can grab it quickly, and it made it sound like we were going through that. Like, yeah, all right, that's clever. And then in the next room, he like slides a piece of paper slightly under a door so that when we continue to infiltrate this keep and end up on the other side of the door, he recognizes it right away. And like those two things were pretty much back to back. And that's when we started to get nervous. And then Randall reminded us that the day before he'd offered to credit card open one of the locked seminar rooms.
Which he did not do.
Nope, he did not do anything illegal.
Disclose that.
He just role played a lot of things that were illegal. Yeah, that's when I told him that he's not welcome in my home, not that I could keep him out.
Yeah. I will not mention anything that might make Randall mad.
This is all in good fun, of course. Randall is a trusted member of the network, and we love him.
So Randall was playing the rogue.
Yes.
Which is appropriate for the shenanigans he was up to that we have since relayed. Keeley was playing a goblin barbarian, which was far more mobile and deadly than I thought barbarians are.
Well, barbarians are usually pretty mobile. They get the fast movement.
Oh, I'm used to my barbarians doing the 5-foot shuffle with the full attacks.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. No, I like playing characters that have 40-foot move in a world of people with 30-foot move. And so barbarians is one of those classes that I will often look at first when I have a concept, just because I know I like the speed.
I guess I've been playing in Reign of Winter. My barbarian was a Blood Rager, so not really a barbarian, but mostly. And focused on natural attacks.
Blood Ragers get the fast movement.
And focused on natural attacks, so it was all about, I need to full attack every round because I got 50 of these things. Not really 50, but it seemed like it sometimes. Yeah. And then you surprised all of us by picking the cleric, and Randall let me play the wizard.
Yeah, Luis pre-generated the characters. He pre-generated 6 characters. He did you the favor of making a diviner wizard, which he knows is your favorite class, and did me the favor of making a fighter who specialized in medicine to kind of, not only was it my favorite class, but it was also to prove the versatility of 2nd edition. Mm-hmm. He underestimated how quick I am to subvert expectations. Yeah. And so I went with my least favorite class, a cleric, and then I did not want to do any spell casting because spells don't come back. It's not like a reusable sword, which I could just do round after round. Now, if I had a sword, that would have been a lot more fun.
Oh, gosh.
It was to stress test the system, and because the year before I had played a fighter in Luis's game, and so I didn't want to do the same thing twice. Mm-hmm. And the year before Luis's game, Luis ran my first playtest experience, and that was my favorite playtest experience of all the playtest experience I had. So I had high hopes that it would be the same thing again, and he could make even my least favorite class, or one of my least favorite classes, fun, which was not fair to him. No, I really should have picked a class I would have had fun with.
Because cleric is one of the least changed classes between the editions.
Now, to be fair, this cleric was a gnome, so that did appeal to me. But really, I should have, especially that late at night on a Sunday, I should have just accepted that, no, just play the class you love.
Right. Oh, well.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing all PaizoCon that I wish I could take back. No, all right, there's one other thing. Every year at PaizoCon, I see this one guy that I remember as having a great sense of humor, and then I make a joke and remember this guy does not have a great sense of humor.
Oh.
And
the same guy.
The same guy, yeah. I always recognize that one guy who I think I gamed with maybe once 5 years ago. And it's like, oh, there's that guy who appreciates a good joke. I make a good joke. He's like, I don't have time for you. Just moves on. So those are my two regrets. Making a joke with the guy that does not actually have the sense of humor I remember him having, and choosing the cleric instead of the fighter in Luis's Fangwood Keep game.
All right. And final game was, in Servitude. You were energized during this convention. I can notice. While the rest of us were slowly losing what little will to live we had left, you somehow put together a adventure in the middle of the convention, pulled some characters together, and ran a game for us.
Yeah, I showed up with I showed up with no plans. I knew I was going to be doing recording and stuff, but the only ticketed event I had was the banquet. And otherwise, I was completely free, which is actually why I had an opportunity to play everything on the list, because John Compton came up to us early on the first day when the store was open and was like, are you guys free for a game? And it just so happened that, yes, we were both free for a game. And then Luis's game was something we had vague plans for, and they kept changing, and I kept being available for whatever his plans were. His wrestling game ended up having a spot open up, so I took that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had no intention to run a game, but within just a couple of hours of being in that PaizoCon atmosphere, I was like, oh, I want a game. Like I want to just throw down a battle map and some dice and say, like, anyone who wants to play a game right now, let's play a game. And that's when I remembered how many network members we had and how valuable it would be to have an all network member game. And so I invited you, Alex, Vanessa, Randall, and Luis to a game on the only spot that I could find an open room that was good for recording in, because if we were going to play a game, we might as well be recording it.
Right.
So that ended up being Monday morning, like 6 hours after the end of Luis's game that we were falling asleep during. Not Luis's fault. I need to really emphasize that any issues we had with Fangwood Keep were our own fault and just our own tiredness.
Right.
So yeah, in that time, I was just constantly making mental notes of like what I could do for this adventure. And Liz Courts was in the exhibit hall, the store, really. If you're picturing an exhibit hall at all like any of the other cons, like Origins or Gen Con, you are picturing the wrong thing. The PaizoCon store is traditionally very small. There's only a couple of booths that aren't just the Paizo store. One of them is Liz Courts, friend of the show and talented artist. Mm-hmm. And so I commissioned her to create art for a new monster that I was going to run at the end of the adventure. I spent maybe 20 minutes in the business lounge, which, by the way, if you are ever going to PaizoCon, use the business lounge because you can do free color printing.
Right.
Like you don't have to bring tons of paper if you're going to be GMing a lot of PFS. Like that is an asset that I don't know a lot of people are aware of. So yeah, I went in there, started to write up some special abilities, made sure that the DCs were all appropriate. Actually, you know what? Tomorrow's blog is going to be about this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. You can read behind the screens tomorrow about my PaizoCon game prep. And then yeah, so Monday morning with no adventure written down, with just some characters printed out, which was 100% because the Hero Lab section was set up, and I was just having a lot of fun going there and fiddling around. I made that John Wick character. I made some custom versions of goblins for this, and I made a couple of NPCs that I needed their stats for reasons related to the creature. Otherwise, they were just kind of background fodder. Yeah, and I put together a game that realistically should have been played in 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
But because of a hard deadline, Vanessa had to catch a plane, and a late start time because, it was Monday morning, the end of a 4-day con. We started late. I had about an hour and a half to run this. And so I squeezed 4 hours into that hour and a half. And it was like, normally I'll run a high energy game, but this was like peak energy. It was like just frenetic. We were jumping from one character to another. Like everything was absolutely off the wall. I never sat down. In fact, even standing up wasn't good enough. I was often just shuffling in place and just kicking my feet back just because I had so much energy from anticipation of the things that you would do on your turn that I couldn't wait to jump in and do the next thing. Mm-hmm. So I thought this adventure went extremely well. I know Vanessa's complimented me on it a couple of times. If you have any thoughts, you're willing to share them.
We were all doing really well. Had a lot of very funny characters. We good for a one shot. I wouldn't want to play these characters long term, and definitely it's going to make for a very fun recording.
Sorry, I'm answering chat because someone is asking in Servitude. So it's in Servitude, but Cerveo. Sorry, Veau. Cerveau is the French word for brain.
Mm,
And as you remember, I don't want to spoil the end boss, but brains were a major component of this adventure.
indeed. I was really worried that our characters were much underleveled when I started seeing some of the things that were hinted at.
Well, I don't want to go into too much detail because we will be releasing not only the audio of that adventure, but also I will write up the adventure itself and stat up that monster and release it all on our Patreon. And towards the end of the show, I'm going to talk about how our Patreon philosophy is going to change. And this is going to be a good indicator of the direction we want to go.
Okay.
But that was it for my games, unless I can't think of anything else.
Right.
Do you want to talk about some of the other highlights of PaizoCon? Or are we ready? I guess, chat, do you want to hear about some other highlights of PaizoCon, or are you ready to hear about our 2E experiences in more crunchy detail?
Yeah. I mean, besides
and
that...
let me just go through... Sorry, go ahead.
While they do that, besides that, my PaizoCon was pretty much, stuck in the stream room, working with the team, and then I had my post PaizoCon chill out session where it was just a lot of staff and some of our members and Paizo crew just sort of hanging around the hotel, chatting and laying in the comfy couch, which is a secret couch in the middle of the hallways that we go to because it is super comfy and quiet, and we can talk shop.
Are you saying that you were hiding a couch for yourself, Paro?
Yes, it's mine. I'm not going to give it up.
I forgot to mention a highlight of the John Compton game where I traded Vanessa's character for one of the NPCs.
Oh my gosh, yes. we
were an all Vesk party, except for Vanessa, who was playing, I want to say, a Sheeran, one of the bug people.
Yes, a Sheeran.
Got it. I am a Starfinder master, so much so that I almost called it Pathfinder. And the rest of us were Vesk, so all the Obadiahs, and I was, or Obadiah, whatever the actual name of that NPC is.
Obadiah is the correct version.
Obadiah. Got it. I got it right on my first try. Starfinder master. I had also rolled up a Vesk, which if people are interested, I can tell about, sure. But yeah, so when we met the NPCs that we were kind of competing against, one of them was a Vesk. And we were allowed to have little conversations with the different ones. So I picked out the Vesk and walked up to it. And without consulting the rest of the party, I said, you know what? We got this bug that's kind of killing our vibe. Why don't you come over to us? We'll have a real Vesk good time. To which John agreed, and to which I hope Vanessa didn't object because she went along with it. But she had to hand over her, and it was a pre-gen. So it's not like she was losing her specific character. But yeah, I've never had a PC swap with an NPC in an adventure before.
But it worked out great. And then the All-Vesk party proceeded to dominate the competition in the most failing, hilarious ways possible, which we can't tell you because that thing's not out yet.
Darren Caldemeyer has asked, can we speak on the vendors that were there and if the vendor hall was filled up?
Filled up is no. The room was definitely bigger than... There was lots of free space to move around. I saw Legendary there. I saw Chaosium there. I saw Wayne Reynolds had a booth set up selling print. Liz was there. Q Workshop was there. There was a crew I don't remember the name of that was selling 3D printed and hand molded gaming terrain that he was painting constantly throughout the convention. And of course, Paizo was there with all the Paizo stuff. A booth set up so you could play the different Paizo computer games. And then Reaper was there with a paint and take, and I didn't get to paint and take this year. That was my big regret of the con, besides not hanging out with more friends.
I did the paint and take. It feels like the few expectations I had this year did not play out the way I expected them to. So I did the paint and take, but I was painting up an Ezrin and I just wasn't feeling it, so I abandoned it. And that was the only paint and take I did. Usually I get a good hour in when I need to relax. I guess because I had this adventure to write instead of... not to write, but to plan out and make sure that I get at least some important details right. Instead of having time to go and paint, I spent that in the business hall, the business center. And then the trivia, like I said, was not the raucous good time because we were actually taking it seriously this time. And I went in hoping to play the new edition of the adventure card game, but never found the time for that. So, it was a very different PaizoCon from what I was expecting. but in a lot of ways that was fine, and in many more ways it was excellent.
And I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Yeah, there was one request for crunch, and no one else really answered the question, so I guess we're moving on to our 2E crunch impressions.
Yep. Also to mention that we do these episodes live in front of a Twitch audience. If you have any questions you want answered, please type them into the chat so that we can answer them throughout the episode. I would say something about an interviewee, but we have no interviewee for the episode 200 because it would be really weird, because we's about to give some very honest opinions about Pathfinder.
I do just want to reference chat one more time. Vanessa has confirmed that she was okay and did give John a non-verbal agreement that she was okay swapping her character out for the NPC.
Mm-hmm. And it is important to note about the epicness of our failure, because even when Thirsty was trying to suicide, as Vanessa was pointing out, he even failed at that.
All right, second edition. So just to recap, we both played a Delve. We both played in Fangwood Keep, and we both, were given a lot of information about second edition through panels and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Plus, I got to see the full resolutions of those slides we were broadcasting on Twitch, but that has now been completely transcribed by a very dedicated community on the Paizo message boards.
I'll just remind people of my journey with 2E, and then you can do the same. So when 2E was announced, I was hyped for it. I thought it was a good time for it. The early promises were extremely exciting. I was on board. And then come the following PaizoCon, when I got to play it with Luis and then play it on the Delve a couple of times, including once run by Jason Bowman, I had a lot of fun. And then as soon as I got the book in my hand, things started to shift. One, I didn't like the character creation rules, which was something that was skipped over completely by playing pre-gens and demos.
Indeed.
And so that was a surprise. The exploration rules, which was something I was really looking forward to, ended up being a lot clunkier and confusing than I wanted. And actually, my hill to die on was that character creation issue. I just felt extremely limited. When I make a character, I like to come up with an idea, take whatever the expectations are, and then, find the exception to it. So Karkarcast was, a gnome warrior, but he was a self-hating gnome, and he was completely unpleasant and cranky. Scales of St. Cuthbert was a character who was, he was basically a paladin type. He was divine. He always talked about his god, except he wasn't divine. He was a sorcerer type character who just insisted that he was getting his powers from God, even though it was arcane in nature. And it really felt like 2E was doing everything it could to not let me do that. To character options that were limited to feats that were siloed to the class. The ancestries were like the ability score generation, which very strongly was influenced by your ancestry, were extremely limited, and basically you could not go below certain stats for most of the stats, except for the one thing that your ancestry was known for being bad at, which meant I couldn't recreate Kark, my favorite character, something we went into on the 2E show. Oh, I forgot to mention there was also the Jason Bowman game at Gen Con, which was, a hoot. And by then I had the rulebook in hand, but I hadn't read it. So after reading the playtest rulebook, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to enjoy making a character for this game, and therefore I'm not going to be invested as a player, because that's like my first entry point, like a cool character that I'm excited to play. So I guess I'm going to resolve to only run this as a GM until the options hopefully open up. And then I GM'd 2 episodes of Doomsplay, which is our actual play of Doomsday Dawn. And first episode was fine. Second episode was my worst GM experience I can remember. And so after just like a couple of months of owning this book, I was like, I can't stand it. I really dislike the system, and I am not optimistic that they will make the changes I feel are needed for me to like this game. Whether the game was financially successful or the game other people wanted is a different conversation. Just personally speaking, it seemed to specifically be going against what I like. And there was also, I was describing this to Param as the death of 1,000 cuts. There were also a lot of tiny changes that I disliked, like monster creation was just make whatever monster instead of the cool systematic thing that I really like about first edition and third edition Dungeons and Dragons that's based on. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there were other. Oh yeah, like I wasn't crazy about goblins being included. I didn't hate it like some other people, but it was like, I believe my exact quote is, "I don't like it, but I also don't care." Mm-hmm. But that was just another one of those little dislikes that was starting to really make me dislike this system. So that's where I was going into this PaizoCon. And in fact, the reason that I wasn't even sure if I was going to go to this PaizoCon is I didn't know if I could take 4 days of just hyping this game that was specifically geared against my taste from my experience with it so far. Farron, where were you going into PaizoCon with Tui?
So, like you, I was hype when the announcement was made. It looked good. I liked a lot of the pitches. Better high-level combat. Simple monster creation rules. That's where we differ on that one. Because I had a taste of it in Starfinder, and I wanted more. And then I also was like, oh, I can totally get behind giving marshals more things to do. And the 3-action system was sounding great. And of course, I like Pathfinder's rules and setting and adventures, and all that stuff is just gravy for me.
Sorry, that was one of the other dislikes, that they combined the campaign setting with the rules. Go on.
Yeah, but I've already been noted on board with yes, campaign setting and rules products. That's fine by me. In fact, I cheered it when it started happening at the end of the first edition's lifetime, and then there's a lot of the promises of the game. I was like, yes, 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 and then the played at PaizoCon. This was awesome. Something seemed weird. And then didn't get to play it at all at Gen Con because I was doing, that was the first year we partnered with, that was the first time we partnered with Paizo to do live streaming. And so me and Lauren were in the live streaming room. But while we were there, we had rule books and we were reading them. Yeah, I know we didn't pay attention to all the panels, but come on. We had that new toy in our hands, and we can't actually see the art during the art panel, so we read. And Lauren was the first to start to pick up on things that weren't kosher. And then I was looking at them, I'm like, oh, well, I can get it. It's a playtest. And then I started noticing the math. And then I started noticing that the caster balance was swung way too far in the opposite direction that it was in 1E. Casters were just pointless almost in the playtest. And poor sorcerers had such a cool flavor bump with the bloodline thing, but then they were the weakest of all casters. And then just the base math when looked at the monsters, because you could download the bestiary, and it was just how are they going to survive? How's the math going to work at all? And I was just oh no, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed with the system. And it's a playtest. We have to be fair. This was a playtest. And then Doomsday Dawn was a whole lot of very much stress testing that. And then my hope dropped. And it just kept dropping. And then it picked back up a little bit when I played in Pathfinder Society. Because the Pathfinder Society adventures were written to be Pathfinder Society adventures. And were not stress tests like some of the playtest stuff was. So they were designed to be a lot more fun game time and a lot less let's see how miserable we can make the movement rolls for the PCs in this encounter. And so I had a little bit more hope. And then a lot of that hope was couched in they will fix these problems, they will hear about them, and they will fix it. But yeah, it was really hoping to. But as the patches started hitting, I swung around because they did start to address the problems directly. They recognized the math problem. They recognized the casting problem. They recognized that we didn't say the R word in this stream yet, but resonance was just the epitome of, oh my gosh, I blocked it out of my brain until just this moment. And I understand where they were going with that, but it was what did Jason Bowman say? It was too much stick and no carrot.
I think that was Stephen that said it. Stephen Radley McFarlane.
Okay, yeah. Too much stick and no carrot. And so I was real worried. And I was like, my favorite game. They've got to make it better, right? These are some of the best designers in the world. They can make it better, right? And so coming into some of the stuff that Jason Bowman came on the show really helped build that confidence back up when he came into his last interview. And then by the 1.6, they had done a lot of edits. They took out resonance, and they talked about they would fix the math. But of course, to fix the math, you'd have to rewrite the whole game.
So they rewrote the whole game.
And that's where I was coming into PaizoCon. I'm like, please have fixed it.
Thoughts?
Well, from everything I've seen, they fixed it.
I agree.
Yeah, they fixed the math. The math felt so good. Characters were succeeding far more than they were failing, and you were really good at the things you were supposed to be good at. Monsters weren't auto-passing all their saving throws for casters. Rogues were able to hit high AC monsters. Fighters were able to take hits. Wizards weren't able to take hits. I didn't feel tanky as a wizard, which is something that happened in the playtest, is that some of the math was so close that when I was playing a wizard during the first part and using the shield spell, I felt as tanky as the tank. And I realized there was very little between us. But now I felt squishy, and I want to feel squishy. I want to fear that ogre coming towards me with that big old club of please don't hit me in the face. And I want the fighter to come up and protect me and save me. And the alchemist was real confusing, but the alchemist in this playtest was not confusing. It was definitely more complicated than any of the others.
This is not the playtest anymore, Baron.
Sorry. In 2E, the alchemist I saw in the 2E delve was much easier to understand and was doing their job much better. They were actually very valuable. They were tossing around healing and damage much better than they were in the playtest. And Sela, even though you talked about the paladin, even it felt a little bit better because she was doing much better job of actually protecting me when I was getting squished, because Sela was able to, when they did the Retributive Strike, also gave me resistance, which means I took less damage, and I needed that because Ogre Hook Face, as referred to earlier. And then, of course, the dying rules, when it finally came up. Yes, I was getting killed. Yes, I scored some hits on Lamash too. That felt good. And that helped show, because that was important. That was super important. Because in the playtest, the math was so tight that when the monster was a few CRs above you, they were impossible to hit. But during the delve, all the monsters were all above us, but we were landing hits and killing them. And even Lamashtu, when she showed up, we had to roll high, but we were able to land hits on a CR8 monster as level 1 critter, as level 1 players, which would not have happened in playtest rolls. We would never have hit. Now, of course, she crit the crap out of us and we died. But that should happen when they outlevel you 7-1. And then, of course, in Luis's game, when I got to see a 4th level character in action with all their stuff and all the options available to me, and then see what the other players were doing, like, again, I felt powerful at what I was doing, weak at what I shouldn't be doing. And then I got to really test out the spells. I was just throwing spells left and right because you're a spellcaster. You're supposed to use the spell slots, Ryan. Small jab.
But they don't come back, Param.
That's right. They don't. But even when I was running low, the new focus mechanic made me feel like I always had something at least powerful in reserve, even if I blew every one of my daily spells. That
was actually one of the other reasons that I wasn't casting, because like every spell had their heightened entry, and I was like, crap, I keep forgetting how heightened works, and I don't want to keep asking Luis the same question, so I just won't cast the spell. It can be heightened, and I might have it heightened. I don't know what rules to use.
If he had it where if it had heightened written, you had prepped it in the higher slot, and then you could cast it at that. Basically, that's the kicker the spell got, because you cast it as a higher level spell, which I understand completely, because I've been following it because of interest in wizards, and all the spells were doing what they were supposed to in first edition again. I threw grease on a freaking wood golem. It fell down. Then we beat it to death with fire. All some things didn't work out. Like I didn't put the monsters to sleep, but that sometimes happens. And the new focus spells felt fun. The delve character was able to throw his stick. Had basically, if you remember the playtest for first edition, Wizards had this, and they still had it in the full version, but it was a really weak version. But Hand of the Apprentice used to be this really nice spell where you threw your weapon, you used int to attack with it, and it did damage, weapon damage plus int for damage, which, for first edition was probably too much because it was an at-will ability. In second edition, it was a focus spell, which means that every spellcaster and a lot of characters have this ability called Focus, that is a point system that you can spend to cast a set of spells called focus spells. And the more of them you take, the more points you get to spend. And but what happens is when you're out of focus, you only have a few points, but then you can, between combats, you can spend a little bit of time to refocus, as they called it, and get your points back. So I was able to use Hand of the Apprentice once per encounter, basically. And it was its full first edition playtest glory, and it was felt nice to just like Ezra just throw his stick out there and take out a hobgoblin. But that was all it could do. Like I was out. I used it. I couldn't do it again, so it didn't feel abusive. And then
then I would have saved it forever.
Oh, you would have never used it, even though you got it back when the fight was over.
Maybe towards the end, I would have found it.
Oh, man, please. I can see why you like marshals so much. I guess you would have also liked the warlock in 3.5 a lot then too.
Oh, right? I love the warlock.
Yeah,
I actually played a version of Azal, one of my other favorite characters, as a warlock, and used some options from Dragon Magazine. This is completely off topic. I'll talk about it another time.
Yeah. Vanessa is asking about the monk stunning fist. I didn't see a monk throughout the con. I saw barbarian. I saw fighter, rogue, barbarian, alchemist, wizard, cleric,
champion,
and champion. Yeah.
As Paisley 5002 corrected both of us. We both called her Sela a paladin.
Well, Sela was a paladin because she was the lawful good spec of the champion, which is called paladin.
So even though I made a mistake, I wasn't wrong.
The neutral good is called a redeemer because if you remember in first edition when they talked about alignments, neutral good is meant to be the negotiator alignment. So they're the redeemer, and liberator is the chaotic good. And there are no evil or neutral paladins presented in the core rulebook. They're all good, but they're all 3 different flavors of good. Though anti-paladin is bound to show up sooner than later. Yeah. And basically everything I saw and everything I heard during the panels just like completely renewed my faith in second edition. Everything I played, I'm itching to play some more. I already, Luis was grateful enough to let us get to know our characters really well. So I got to see a lot of abilities that the wizards could do. Oh, my diviner, its focus ability instead of the Hand of the Apprentice thing is it could roll a d20 and just put it on the table, and other characters could use that result for their saves. No, I passed it on to somebody, and I was like, here, you're the rogue. You're about to go into a dangerous situation. You spent my focus. I rolled a d20. If it was high, that was good. Like I rolled a 13 on one of them, and we just put that 13 down on the table. And so when the rogue would trigger a trap or something and need to make a saving throw, he could grab my 13 as and use that instead of rolling for themselves.
I forgot one of my other complaints. So you were mentioning that the wizard felt like a tank in first edition when he had his shield up. And a big reason why that second Doom's Play episode, just like my enthusiasm dropped as soon as I realized everyone had the exact same AC.
Yeah, all the characters. Like, even the sorcerer.
To the number.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, oh my God, choices don't matter. Classes don't matter. Nothing. The system is built so that you get the optimal number you need. And there's no point even thinking about your classes. Like, it was probably an exaggeration, but like that was just the enthusiasm draining out of my body when it's like they made a system that's so balanced that everything is an illusion of choice.
Right.
And there's nothing I like least than
and that was calling back to a very specific Dark Spectre in their past, wasn't it, Ryan?
It was. Wow, that was a low moment.
Yeah.
But
I
didn't like playing this cleric, but boy, did it feel like I was playing a cleric.
Yeah.
And I regret not playing a fighter because I bet that fighter would have felt like a fighter. And the champion I played, who was a paladin, felt like a paladin. And when I was in the group and everyone was playing their character slightly differently, they were playing in line with what I expect those characters to be. So it's like you said, that the math needs to be free, that you can be bad at things. And that's so important for it to feel like me and my big chunky armor is more protected than you and your cloth. Even with magic protecting you, there should be a difference between how we're defending ourselves other than the flavor of having the number that's exactly the same.
Yeah.
I also have it on good authority that if you try hard, you can get a gnome with 8 charisma. And that is really important to me because that was my hill to die on.
Right.
And I no longer need to die on that hill. That aspect of character creation has been broadened up, and now that when I want a character with a big butt, I can have my characters with their big, it's this butt.
Oh,
My characters with a big butt.
Oh dear
Fair.
goodness, Ryan.
That's how I'm building my characters now.
And another one of your sticking points was the backgrounds. Now, you didn't harsh on the backgrounds in PF2's playtest even as badly because there were so many of them compared to Starfinder, where it was just the 7, but themeless existed.
Right, yeah. So it's not so much that I hated the backgrounds. It's I don't like that kind of like, this is where your character's coming from instead of, your creativity. But I loved that in Starfinder, they said, here's the one if you just don't want any information about your background to be predetermined by a role.
And we haven't heard any confirmation that there is a similar thing in PF2, but they did say there's like 50 plus backgrounds in the core rulebook, so surely we can find something that's for most characters there.
Yeah, and including, because they gave some examples. What were some of the examples? It was like different professions, right? You could be like the candlestick maker.
Yeah.
That's actually, if there's that many that are flavorful enough, but not restricting in how that flavor is implemented, then I could see myself reading a backstory and basing an entire character around what that background gives me.
Yeah.
So there, I think, I don't think it's going to be a sticking point. It was one of my minor complaints, but it was more one of the things I really liked about Starfinder.
Right. Yeah. So I'm looking. So, gosh, if character creation seems to be loosened up, we were definitely bad at things. I was squishy. I couldn't do things, but you could become good at things. Like with Luis's example, fighter that could be a primary healer, like could be the cleric of the party, but the fighter, using mundane bandaging. In fact, he built my my wizard so that I could do some healing and outside of combat, and that came up. I used it to see how it was, and wouldn't replace the cleric, but it certainly helped out and helped save some spell slots using the new healing rules, and that felt good. In fact, a lot of the choices they've done have made it feel like I didn't, like I know you're talking about spinning your spells, but they actually made it feel like I didn't need to save. I didn't need to squander. I didn't need to be like a 5-minute adventuring day. I could use like 1 or 2 spells per combat, 1 or 2 of my good spells per combat, and then rely on my, reserve stuff like my focus spells and my cantrips, and healing with mundane means to supplement the magic healing. Felt like we really wouldn't be trying to camp out in the dungeon every 3 fights.
Darren Kaldmeyer asks, do you think the Pathfinder core rulebook will sell out the initial print run shortly after launch? Also, do you think we will get an updated printing with errata measured in months? I think even when I had no faith that I would like second edition, I had full faith that it would be a success at launch. It's just Paizo's track record, and I really think the only people that were really had lost all enthusiasm about second edition were the ones who really played into the playtest, and like me, it just was not to their taste. So it was really, when you break it down, I think even though there was resonating negativity towards the product, it was with a specific group of people that it is important for Paizo to please, because they are like they're the alpha gamers that will be helping get the product out there. But it wasn't so much of the potential market that they would have not had the huge Gen Con that they're known for.
Right. And well, the only reason I don't think this would, I think this would sell out unless they print an ungodly amount of them. And they might print an ungodly amount of them and bring them to Gen Con.
They thought they printed an ungodly amount of Starfinder, and they sold out by day 2.
Yeah.
Or was it day 1? No, they were sold out by hour 5, weren't they?
Yeah, it was the first hour. And Armory the very next year. Thus, just the Adventurer Armory for Starfinder sold out the first day. And that was nuts.
There we go. Confirmed. Well, by description of this too. Mm-hmm. I'll say that's, he's an authority. Hour 5, it sold out.
Yeah. So first, pre-order if you want it, gang. Do that. Either through your store or, either through your FLGS or Paizo. Because I think this will sell out. And also,
Zathos of Varisia in chat is saying the Gen Con map shows them with a booth outside the Sagamore again. So that's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. Okay, good. So there's more than one place to do it. Also, remember that if you have a subscription through Paizo, the Gen Con pickup is reserved. You don't have to rush the booth in the first hour. You can wait for that to die down and pick up.
Speaking of which, Tadeichman was asking if PDFs in subscriptions are still happening. Param, what's the latest on that?
We have no idea. There is nothing to report on that, which is a little bit odd. I'm getting kind of nervous on that front. I kind of hope it's just because things are working out, but they've not.
There was even a seminar with Mark Moreland and Mark Seifter called Question Marks, which was a Q&A, and it was just wonderfully clever. And someone asked them that question because everyone's asking that question. People are trying to, budget for their gaming for the rest of the year. And their answers were not the same. One of them said that they were told specifically that there is no answer, and one of them just did not have an answer. So not the same, but neither of them said yes. No one has ever confirmed that, yes, these subscriptions or PDFs will be available with subscription or as an add-on to your subscription. Just this major selling point that Paizo was known for is just, for whatever reason, radio silent.
We got Majana? Not sure. Majuna asks, so did it feel like an overall improvement to PF1, ignoring the obvious differences? In my opinion, yes. It still felt like Pathfinder, like I was playing Pathfinder. It definitely felt like I was playing the sequel to Pathfinder, not D&D 3.5 anymore. This definitely felt like the sequel to the game Pathfinder became in its later years. And it definitely polished over a lot of the things I didn't like about Pathfinder and never have. I mean, do not mistake me. I love Pathfinder. I love D&D 3.5. I love D&D 3.0. But even me loving that game recognizes high level play breaks down. When you have a lot of attacks around, it slows down play. Attacks of opportunity in the 5-foot step shuffle meant that combats met in the spot and usually stayed there, and not a lot of fun happened with mobility. And this solved all of those problems.
For me, I'm a little more neutral. Adventurous will continue to be first edition.
Right.
And all my home games, so my Curse of the Crimson Throne game, I am not going to be the one that votes to change to second edition, but if that's what the majority wants, I will definitely not say no. If it comes up to vote and I'm asked, I will, but for not the same reason as other people, I will, so to stay informed for the podcast.
Right.
And I can definitely see myself eventually slowly converting over to second edition. It's just not something I feel absolutely has to happen right away at launch. So, yeah, it's just a matter of, I still like first edition enough. I still have my first edition engine is still revving. Like, I just made Monombre, and I'm really excited to see him at the table. And I still have concepts of things that could play out in first edition. But I definitely see myself one day converting to second edition, or possibly juggling both. I think I'd be able to manage both of those systems because they are different enough that I think as soon as I start playing second edition and like the action economy will really put me in the second edition headspace. And I play simple characters in that, like, I don't play really spellcasty characters. So the rules are pretty straightforward and basically will be summed up on the character sheet. So, yeah, it's still like I have positive vibes towards second edition. I just won't be an early adapter to it. But I will absolutely say that is very important for the future of No Direction as a network. And we're going to talk about that when we get to just celebrating 200 episodes of No Direction towards the end of this episode. It's 10:15, Param. We've still got some other highlights we can talk about from our PaizoCon experience. Oh, and we haven't even touched the news.
No. Oh, I get to push the button. I'm pushing the button.
Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news.
In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about the latest happenings for the Pathfinder role-playing game from Paizo, other third-party publishers on occasion, other things related to Pathfinder other than rules. But today, we are definitely talking a lot about rules, releases, things that Pathfinder, things coming from Paizo for Pathfinder, and a little bit Starfinder thrown in. Mm-hmm. So at the banquet, Param, and a little bit peppered throughout some of the seminars, we found out several new hardcovers that are going to be coming out towards the end of the year.
Right.
So we don't know anything 2020 yet, but we do know the rest of 2019's hardcovers plans. I believe we know all of them. We also know the adventure path that's coming after Age of Ashes.
Which is super important because it's kind of hints at how they're going to expand Pathfinder 2. And that was a very important question. Because Pathfinder itself isn't even Pathfinder till the APG is taken into consideration. It's just a really cool 3.5. And so Pathfinder 2, if needs to be judged on what it will become, not just what that initial 640-page rulebook is.
I think less so than first edition, just because first edition was trying to be backwards compatible with 3.5. So if the core rulebook was backwards compatible, that was considered a success. Second edition is not trying to be backwards compatible. So it's more of a new system now. Anyway, I do agree that as we continue to grow, that's where we'll really start to define it. But I do think Pathfinder Second Edition is going to define itself better than Pathfinder First Edition's core rulebook.
Yep.
So in fact, the 2 hardcovers we found out about were both campaign setting books. Now, the way the campaign settings are going to work now is that the banner on the book will still just say Pathfinder, and in the top right corner, it'll stay Second Edition. But now there will be a subtitle that comes before the title, which is Lost Omens. If it says Lost Omens, then this is a purely campaign setting book.
That's not entirely true.
Okay,
the
correct.
The World Guide line is that line of books. The first 3 are the Lost Omens trilogy. So it just happens that the first 3 were called Lost Omens because they all have to do with the Age of Lost Omens.
Are you sure about that? I thought that the campaign setting at this point was being called the Lost Omens campaign setting.
It is the Lost Omens campaign setting, but the line of product is called the World Guide line. And it won't necessarily have Lost Omens in the title going forward.
I'll take your word for it, because you were in a lot more seminars related to this than I was.
They said it in the banquet.
They said a lot in the banquet. Okay, fine. So the first of the 2 is the character guide, which it wouldn't be discussing the announcement of a hardcover book without me taking some exception to the title. Because the character guide is going to be, it's going to have a lot of ancestry options, some of which I'm very excited about, including things that are akin to ethnicities, which up until now has been pretty much a human domain. Not domain, but like in a human area of the rules. So that branching out is super valuable to me. I think that's something that Pathfinder's needed for a long time. And then it'll introduce 3 new ancestries. Not the bugbear. A running gag is that Eric Mona accidentally put bugbear on the slide when he meant hobgoblin,
which confused me to goodness, because player character goblins is pushing pushing credulity a little bit. Player character bugbears wouldn't work. They're a species of serial killers.
I think most people still think of bugbears as like the small ogres, but I really like how they were portrayed in Classic Monsters Revisited, where they were literal boogeymen, and that some of them had the ability to turn invisible to everyone but one person and just mess with that one person.
That
what
is
a
such
cool
a
ability.
They made a monster so cool, and yeah. So it's sorry.
It will be the hobgoblin, the lechy, and the lizard folk. Let's start there. I find that a bit of an odd selection for the first 3 non-core race ancestries.
I think they wanted to go out there with the first crew to just let people that want to play that really exotic species get at it, because I guess it means that it would be all too easy for this to be Asmar, Tiefling, Kitsune, Wei Yang, the list of stuff we could play in society without a boon. But this way, we're getting to play some really exotic heritages right off the bat.
Lechy, I appreciate, and I think a lot of people will. The Lechy didn't get a long run in first edition and was popular right at the gate. Lizard folk I appreciate as something very different from anything in the core rulebook. Hobgoblin I don't particularly like.
Yeah, I'm not kind of with the hobgoblin. I would have even liked orc better. But
I agree. Yeah, it's kind of like orc and everything but name.
Yeah, well, hobgoblins are like the stormtrooper species, where orcs are the chaotic roaming horde, and the Iron Fang invasion really put them front and center, and that was really popular with glass cannon. So I can see why they chose it. And Pathfinder hasn't
glass
really
cannon's playing Giant Slayer, not Iron Fang.
Who was playing Iron Fang?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry. I got that backwards. But
it's fine.
You're right. They're totally playing Giant Slayer.
And I get that they didn't give us all of the ancestries that you were just talking about, but I feel like at least one of those more fan favorite ones, especially one more tied to Galarian, I just think would have been a better choice, or at least a more satisfying choice. I'm sure the hobgoblins will be like mechanically interesting. It's just
well, maybe this is all the others were boring until Classic Monuments are revisited. Maybe this is the book that makes hobgoblins interesting.
Even hobgoblins weren't interesting in Classic Monster Revisited. It is one of the few entries in that book that I was like, meh.
Yeah. And the next line kind of got me a little bit more excited, which is the factions, which is something new. Like, we had faction before, but this seems to be a new concept on that. Hell Knights and Pathfinder Society are the two they're exampling. I'm imagining Eagle Knights if Hell Knights are there, but maybe not. And we don't know the other three, but I'm just guessing there. And it will be archetypes and templates for playing as those faction members, which means character options there, as well as templates to make NPCs and monsters that tie into that faction. And that's where my GM brain was like, what? What's a Hell Knight? What's a Hell Knight bugbear look like? What's a Hell Knight?
Really cool, I bet.
Yeah, very cool. Stalky. You did wrong, and I will taunt you from a distance about that blood on your hands.
Factions is exciting, and I like that it's being incorporated into the game really early on, because factions exist in first edition, but I feel like it came in a little bit late, and it never got fully integrated into the game. I think it was introduced in one of the softcover books, right?
Well, there was a really early faction guide book that came out, and it was ultimately fairly early in Pathfinder's lifetime, but it just never really fleshed out. And then the new rules for influence that were used in War for the Crown and some of the Pathfinder Society adventures past that were different and better.
So the reason I was taking exception to this being called the Lost Omens character guide is because I get the impression of the advanced player's guide, like a book that's just, here's a little bit of all options. But what we just listed, heritages and factions, is basically the whole book. Right. There's virtually no class feats in this book. It's very specific to those two categories of the rules, which does not feel like a character guide to me.
Right, and it's 136 pages, so this is going to be a very slim book. Starfinder players will feel at home here, because we've had very tiny books lately. All the books for Starfinder have been very tiny books like this, which they're nice. It's just, Oh, it's also $34.99 price point, so it is significantly cheaper than the other hardcovers.
So Luis is in chat, not just the network's own Luis, but also Paizo developer Luis. He says hobgoblins have a good reason for getting in. Winky face.
Taunting us, Luis. Now, Descriptivus. These are Starfinder length books for the World Guide line. Do not worry. The rule book line, which still exists, are full-size books, and we will get to that later. But there's a 400-page bestiary, not a 128-page bestiary. This is just the World Guide line, which is basically combining the two soft covers into one book. You will not be losing out on page count in Pathfinder 2nd edition by the math I did.
Now, there's a couple of other comments from our friends from Paizo that are currently in chat. Luis, once again, says there is an all-new organization.
Ooh, a new one.
Cool. And then Mark Seifter says Lost Omens, Ancestries and Allies doesn't fit on the book.
Oh, okay. So they considered that.
Next up, we've got Gods and Magic, which I think is pretty much that's a title that I expect to be exactly on. We've seen what Pathfinder does what Paizo does with their God books before, and even though that's not a type of character I tend to play, I do also tend to like those books. Yeah. They flesh out the world in a very specific way.
And it says it's going to have the basic what you expect here. It's going to talk about how the deities have been that are important for the 2nd edition and the advances in what's happened in the campaign setting. It's going to have rules for all of those expanded deities, including and it's also going to have feats and spells and character options like you want. And the last line is important, not just for clerics and the like, because what I have seen from 2nd edition, and they've hinted at a lot in the panels, was that religious rituals and actually using the skills, the mystic skills, and doing rituals is much more prevalent, so that characters that don't have spell casting can still make their faith an important part of their character and gain benefits and uses from that. One of the instances that they said is that a high level Valeros might be able to pour ale on top of their dead friend with a prayer to Kaedin to bring him back.
Did they say that at the banquet?
No, it was in one of the panels.
Okay, because that is a super cool visual, and on point, and I like that very much.
Yeah. So the second they did that, it made me very happy because one of my players in my home game plays a rogue that is dedicated to Kaodin, but doesn't like the idea of cross-classing to cleric to get religious stuff. And we are planning to convert that game to a second edition. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus with that one too, and are playing Starfinder in the meantime, and until second edition comes out, so we can update those characters and play them.
We learned a little bit more about Age of Ashes Adventure Path. We know that it's going to be heavily dragon focused, and I've heard, I didn't confirm this, that every book will feature a different ancestry. Like you'll visit a human city, a dwarven colony, etc. Which, if that's true, that sounds like a cool way of introducing the status quo for all of these ancestries for new players that are new to second edition.
And dragons, it's about dragons. And dragons, I love Pathfinder, but for all of Pathfinder, except for Dragon's Demand, a notable exception, didn't really do dragons with a spotlight. And I want to see what...
It's in Dungeons and Dragons' name.
I know, but
they shied away from dungeons.
I want to see what Pathfinder does when its flagship line is focusing on dragons. I want to see the majesty of these winged creatures just owning face.
I'm on board. I'm actually more surprised that they are doing it than, surprised that they didn't do it up until now. The second adventure path we got a little bit of taste of. Mm-hmm. It's Extinction Curse. Mm-hmm. And the big selling point, there were probably a lot of selling points, but the one that really resonated in the banquet hall was that you play a traveling band of circus performers.
Yay! You can be the clowns that stab us. Evil clowns that stab us in Adventurous. We trust no clowns in Adventurous.
That is it, to my knowledge, for Pathfinder releases. Do you concur?
No.
Oh!
Game Mastery Guide was confirmed.
Oh, that's right. That was never confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. When's Game Mastery Guide coming out?
It is October. I think it's October. I might be wrong on that. Oh, yes. Maybe. Do not know. Game Mastery Guide confirmed.
Winter is what my notes say.
Winter.
My notes. We've been using Geek Dad. They have a very good news report that summarizes a lot of the news that was streamed out at the banquet.
Yeah.
And, there we go. It's even got a link to the specific video if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So, there's been hints that this will include things like less magic. Like, this is less magic focused character options, lots of alternate rules options for running your campaign. It's been hinted that this is where the monster and NPC creation rules will be, because there wasn't room for them in the 400-page bestiary.
Because of every monster's getting their page or two.
Right. I know, but still, it's like, but I want them now. Well, I guess we won't be waiting long.
Here's what I'd rather. I would rather one book that has the monster creation rule than every single bestiary dedicating 20 pages to the same rules.
Well, Starfinder just put it in the first bestiary because it's a core requirement and didn't reprint them in subsequent bestiaries.
That's good.
Yeah. But what they did instead is each bestiary has its own little 12-page sub-rule set. Like the second one came around and it had polymorph rules. And then the
first one had the summon monster rules, right?
The first one also had summon monster. And the third one, it's hinted that that's going to have the animal companion rules. But that's a Starfinder topic, which I guess is some stuff we'll talk about.
Yeah, actually, I guess it's a good time to move on to the announcements for the Starfinder releases. You are probably going to cover these in more detail in an upcoming Beyond.
Well, there's really only two things to talk about with Starfinder. There wasn't a lot announced. Their Attack of the Swarm Adventure Path, we got to see a lot of art from that. That was already announced. Alien Archive 3, we got to see a lot more of that, and that was already announced. So the only new thing that was announced was the new adventure path coming for Starfinder, the Threefold Conspiracy, which is about the unseen. And the unseen are basically the alien species that are all in this conspiracy theories and in modern worlds. So you have the reptoids that are shape changers and secretly in the government, and you have the greys that abduct people and erase their memories and stuff and do lots of proby things. We don't know what the third one is because they're too secret to be secret. And so we've got this whole like conspiracy theory: are they? Aren't they? Are you crazy? Aren't you crazy? Adventure path coming up, and our own Vanessa Hoskins will be writing book 5 of that. So congratulations, Vanessa.
Yeah, the Cradle Infestation is coming out in Starfinder issue 29. We got a little bit of news for the the adventure card game.
Right.
Those releases came out at PaizoCon,
Right.
which was fun. We don't usually get debuts at PaizoCon, and I don't know if this was the plan or if it's just how things worked out, because I know with the adventure card game from last year, they said they weren't going to release it until it was done and everyone was satisfied. So I guess it's done. Everyone's satisfied.
Yeah. I didn't get to play it myself, but I did talk to a lot of people who did. They seemed happy with the changes. This isn't a full-on new edition. It's just a lot of rules changes and all your previous cards are compatible with it. So it's mostly a format change and a revision.
Yeah, so the new core set is just called the Adventure Card Game Core Set, which I pictured as like one of those short vests that you can really tie tight. It's the Adventure Card Game Corset.
Oh,
thank you.
Daggone it, Ryan.
It's available now. There's 440 cards. It's $60, which feels high, especially for a second edition of a game, but I don't know exactly how much original art went into it, and I don't know how much how the quality of the cards may have changed.
Yeah, and I don't know what else comes in that box.
And then there's the first adventure path, which is the Curse of the Crimson Throne, a much smaller box than those giant boxes you might be used to seeing in your
has more
local game
cards.
store. Yep, 550 cards for $50 now. But it's an add-on. You do still need the core set to run that game.
Yeah, the core set itself has Dragon's Demand as the pack-in adventure, and I hear it has 13 adventures you can play through that. So 13 sessions worth of cards before you have to repeat.
Programmer has a question in chat that I'm not sure if we got all of the words for it. They say, any word on reprinted material? For example, if I want to play a hobgoblin, will I have to? Were you meaning to say, will I have to buy that particular book that we already talked about, the character guide? Anyway, either way, I have not heard anything about reprinted material. I don't know if hobgoblin playable ancestry rules are going to be included anywhere else. I doubt they'll be in the bestiary, just because bestiaries are meant to be really 1 or 2 pages for the monsters.
I've got confirmation on that front from that no, the bestiary does not have rules for playing characters, because Pathfinder 2nd Edition requires so much more information, so much more material to support an ancestry, because you need those ancestry feats. And if they tried to squeeze those in the bestiary, a lot of the ancestries would basically only have enough options to legally put a character together with no choices.
All right. Society in general. Do you want to...
Okay.
Is it time?
Yeah, I think it's time. There's going to be a new society! Yay! We kind of knew that. None. They've already announced this on the blogs, but none of the old factions are coming forward. They have a whole new factions that are focusing more on group participation rather than internal infighting. It's year 1 is going to be Year of the Open Road, and will be a nice little tour of the realm and getting back to the basics of Pathfinders, of exploring things and documenting things. They mentioned in some of the panels that, less focus on saving the world and time travel and some of the shenanigans we got to in the later parts of it. So back to basics, gang.
Now, you said no factions will be coming forward, but we will see familiar faces.
Yeah.
They aren't completely rebooting it. There will be some familiar NPCs.
Yeah. The storyline isn't getting reset. Just the new factions, and it's going to use a faction system like Starfinder, where you can actually be in multiple factions. Basically, you declare who you're supporting during an adventure, and you get to hear what the adventure is before you make that choice. Like,
speaking of Starfinder, probably some of the most exciting and surprising news from PaizoCon came related to Starfinder Society, and I love this title, The Year of 1,000 Bytes.
Yeah, we want to save some of the discourse for this for beyond next week. Okay. We don't want to steal that, but Years of 1,000 Bytes is, of course, going to tie into the adventure path Attack of the Swarm. Lots of buggies. Actually, no, they mentioned rats. We don't know. It's going to be interesting. But one of the things that really got a lot of attention is that the Second Seekers were, as a faction in Starfinder, for Pathfinder players that don't know, that, well, basically, the Second Seeker becomes the First Seeker when the First Seeker, who is the leader of the Starfinder Society, is incapacitated or taken out. And the start of the Starfinder Society is most of the Starfinders went out on this big mission in the Scoured Stars, and they all disappeared. And they're gone, which included the boss. So there is no leader right when that society formed. And the Second Seekers were basically a faction for people who wanted to support the Second Seekers and the different people that were going to be pushing to become that leadership. And the top reward for the characters that advanced their faction all the way was just a message to email Paizo about their character and gave an email address. It turns out that the new First Seeker will be chosen among the people that emailed in and completed that arc. They've basically taken all those emails, narrowed it down to a select few. I think there's going to be 3 or 4 final choices, very different choices from each other. There's going to be a special scenario put out where players will get to do missions for each of them, much like the original beginning adventure, where you do missions for each of the faction leaders. And you'll get to know what their characters or goals are about and more about their personality. And then there will be an election where all the Starfinder Society members can vote on the new First Seeker, who will stay playing that character and will actually work with Paizo and the Starfinder Society team to make the missions in Season 3 about what the direction that their agenda will be, the agenda that we go on in Season 3.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe they're doing that. It's so cool. We're going to geek out about it so much on Beyond next week. But that is a brave step and the kind of things I want to see out of organized play. I love that real players are making actual difference in how the game goes.
It's been a long time since that you've been arguing that Starfinder Society might be the greatest thing that Paizo has been putting out for the last couple of years. And while I believe you, this might be the most tactile example of that. This is just, no company does something like this anymore. This is the kind of thing that I remember comics from the 80s telling me if I play a certain video game, I might win a sword and I might get involved in the game in some way. And those always ended up being a lie. But I 100% believe everything that you just explained. And I am super excited to see how this plays out.
And they said the character will still be playing because no Starfinder's maxed level yet. That can't be.
Wow.
So you could sit at a table with the boss and go on a mission. And they said, gosh, what would happen if that character died on that mission? They're going to be keeping track of what happens to that player's character for sure.
Man, this is exciting. So this is one of 2 really exciting integrations of social media and groundswell that they pulled off at PaizoCon. So this was one of them, and this is something that it's like, I am going to do my best to keep up with this character's story to see who gets elected. And basically every time they go on a mission, I hope that somebody reports on it publicly so that we know what their status is as a character, and their life. But the other thing that was super exciting was Jason Bullman handed out 100 spoilers for 2nd edition at the banquet.
Gosh, this was
on
such
cards
a brilliant idea.
with the hashtag #MyPathfinderSpoiler, and the challenge to collect them all in 2 weeks and post them somewhere online with that hashtag, which immediately was like, the excitement was there. It immediately became something that everyone at the banquet wanted to be a part of. People were collecting cards. I've got a stack of 40 of them here. And unfortunately, we don't have all of them yet. No. There are still, 5 specific individual numbers that are missing?
As of this morning, I believe there were 5 missing. Dungeon Novice says, where is number 6? ! Are we down to just 1? Are we down to just 1 card missing? Oh man, that would be nuts. What was the one, 66 or 67 was Jason Bowman's favorite, and it turned out that a flying cat can be your familiar, and it's the most adorable piece of art I've ever seen. Oh, you've got it. You've got it. 77. And yes, it is that kitty. That can be one of your familiars. I don't care what I have to do. I want that.
So, yeah, there's. I'm not sure if I can pronounce your name. Elf Iro in chat is saying they fear the last ones will stay like that. And it's true. If they haven't come up now, like, what are the odds these things just pop up that somebody got one of these cards, didn't post them online, and they're just sitting in a suitcase somewhere?
Oh, no.
5 unique cards. There's apparently four versions of each card, not versions, four like copies of each card that were handed out. We know that there were actually more cards printed than there were people at the banquet. The odds that the same 5 were not handed out to somebody seems pretty low. But where are they? Like, what happened to these last 5 cards? Where's number 6?
Pseudo Sphinxes are League familiars in first edition, says Bard Wannabe. I guess that's a different spoiler.
They're legal in first edition. He's saying you can get a flying cat in first edition, a pseudo sphinx.
Okay. All right. So, the text of all these spoilers and the text for pretty much every one of the slides that you can view on the stream. If you watch the stream of the banquet, we actually managed to get the presentation in advance so that we could put the slides up on screen just as they talked about them at the banquet. So of course people screen cap those right away, and all the cards text and all the slide text are on the Paizo forums where you can go read them and just get a gigantic info dump of what second edition looks like.
So someone in chat, a descriptivist, is saying they thought that it was 7 cards left, and I just went to our Discord channel on PaizoCon to see what the latest was, and Vanessa has also posted, how are we doing on cards? So this is obviously something that has really struck a chord. It's really something that people are excited about.
Right.
Oh, and also I've got phonetic pronunciation. El Te-Ro. Rao? El Te-Rao? El Te-Ro? Probably Ro.
All right. So what's left?
We got little bits of news. New information about the Kingmaker CRPG.
Yeah, there's going to be an enhanced edition released that includes new stuff for the game. I forget all the new stuff, but lots of fun things. If you're an existing owner of the game, you're going to get the upgrade to it for free. You don't have to buy it. They also announced there's going to be a final. Well, we don't know if it's final. There's going to be another piece of DLC called the Dungeons Below, which is, I might have the name of that wrong. I think that's the name of it. But it is basically a giant set of dungeons that you can take your characters or new characters into. Basically a piece of infinite repeatable content for the game.
Beneath the Stolen Lands.
Okay, Beneath the Stolen Lands. It's a big mega dungeon expansion of repeatable content for you to play through your characters with, or make new characters to play through it.
Matt J. Harris says it's roguelike. Doesn't that mean that it is procedurally generated?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's not just repeatable, it's unique every time.
Exactly. Well, within a set number of random parameters.
Yeah, okay. And finally, what is the news on third-party publishing for second edition Pathfinder?
Yeah, I think it was interesting that they had Owen Casey Stevens take off his Paizo hat, put on his third-party publishing hat. He was wearing no hats. There was no hats involved. It might have been.
Didn't he say that he left his hat at home?
Yeah,
he actually had a hat made.
It's the Emperor's new hat. Either way, he got up on stage to speak as a third-party publisher because he, of course, runs Rogue Genius Games, in addition to the other billion things he does, including work with us at the network on project, which we have to disclose. And he talked about the third-party future for Pathfinder 2, and it sounds like they very much want third-party support for Pathfinder 2. It was really pretty big, important part of Pathfinder 1, in my opinion. So there is going to be a Pathfinder compatibility license for Pathfinder 2. And if the Pathfinder 1 compatibility license is going to continue in perpetuity, they're not cutting that off. And if you are a third-party publisher that sells products at Paizo.com, or you sell physical books through Alliance, which is their distributor and also pretty much the big distributor for role-playing games in the United States, at least. You can email them and get an advanced copy of the rules so that you can start prepping your products for day one launch.
He also then went on his personal Facebook page and alluded to one of the first projects he's got ideas for being a second edition Time Thief. And I'm a big fan of the Time Thief.
Right.
I played Time Thief in my second Kingmaker run through, and I love that class. I love time travel shenanigans. I love the potential of the Time Thief in second edition, where you could borrow an action from the next round, but then only get 2 actions that round. Like, this is something that could be... It could have a whole new life in a whole new way in second edition.
I have a feeling that alone has got you jazzed for second edition more than other things.
I did already post in reply to his comment a concept for a Time Thief in second edition.
Fantastic. And really, I can totally see third parties going nuts with this fertile ground, because Pathfinder 2 was intentionally designed modular, where it's very distinct pieces that connect very cleanly to each other, instead of first edition, which was a core system that has been sort of patched onto with a lot of subsystems that don't cleanly connect to it over the years. I'm talking about things like chase rules and the downtime system, and I know. Yeah. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's definitely, it shows that this is a game that is very old and has been patched to be a more modern game through 19 years of play. And Pathfinder 2 was designed intentionally to be modular, so that means that third-party companies that have ambitious ideas should be able to tie into its modular elements a lot easier.
Modularity.
Yes. Modular also means easier to make computer programs to support, which of course makes me very happy. And I know it makes other people very happy.
That was a little more contentious during the playtest, but now that we've got a tabletop version that works and I think people will be quite happy with, it's not such a it's not so taboo to say we're also making this game work for computer games.
Right. Well, no, it's not so much just work for computer games. It's this will make it easier to make apps that make it easier to play the game, like summon monster apps on your phone, or character creators, or spell card generators. This makes our lives easier, the people that make these things, so that we can make tools to make your game more awesome. This doesn't even talking about computer games playing it.
I've heard Hero Lab lamenting, like, whenever a new concept comes out, and it could just be like a feat in a softcover book that makes them go like, how are we supposed to implement this into our existing chassis? Like, we have to now redesign an entire chunk of program for a minor option that may never get picked.
Right. And that, not quite that bad, but every time they added a class in Pathfinder that cast a unique spell list, it made my job so hard. I had to basically rewrite some big chunks of my program to support whatever new wackiness came with the new class. And the idea of we have 4 spell schools, and even if they eventually add a 5th spell type later, that's going to be so much easier to support in Param spell cards.
Well, Param, it's been a good episode.
Yep.
And it's been a great run. This is episode 200 of No Direction.
Yep.
And what a good time for episode 200, because like a week ago, I didn't know if there would be an episode 201.
Oh, man. Really?
I mean, it was a small possibility, but it was actually realistically a possibility. And that was not something I was expecting around, circa episode 150 or so. Mm-hmm. I still have a lot of fun recording this podcast. I love the opportunity to talk to you on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis and coordinate with you for a long time. But it's I needed this PaizoCon exactly when it came. I needed the rejuvenation, and I needed, there was always going to be a network, right? I was always going to be a part of the network, but specifically the No Direction podcast had an uncertain future. And in some ways, in ways that we can't go into, there's still some elements that are uncertain, but for the rest, there's still a future for No Direction, and that makes me happy.
Right. I'm very at this point, I am hopeful that I will get to see an episode 300. And that seemed very iffy at some points during this year.
Now, during the banquet, Eric Mona gave us a nice shout out, which could have been part of our license agreement because we did have a partnership for them to get the coverage done. But it was also a true statement that when No Direction started and 3.5 Private Sanctuary before that, most people at Paizo did not know what a podcast was. Most people in general didn't know what a podcast was. This was this weird emergent medium that I, not a tech guy, happened to be at the start of. And with the help of originally Jay Dubsky on Private Sanctuary, and then shortly into No Directions Run, you came on board and you were both able to help me grow it into something much larger than I could have ever achieved on my own. You especially, no offense to Jay, but like Jay and I saw it in the same way as a hobby, and we came with two different skill sets. But what you've brought to the network and the way you've helped it turn into a network that's grown and it's gone beyond just the audio, it's also a blog. It's Param, these 200 episodes are dedicated to you, buddy.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. But really, gosh, you're the one that keeps us together and keeps us moving along.
I mean, I'll take credit for some things, sure.
But
no, honestly, in a lot of ways, this is a hobby of mine, and I enjoy it very much. And it's become something more than just a hobby for me because of you.
Awesome.
And there we go. Dungeon Novice just said Param with beautiful angelic wings in chat.
Well,
but like Twitch is actually a perfect example, and Discord as well. These are both things that were not on my radar. So similar to like I lucked into podcasts at the beginning, but you knew the space. You knew that Twitch was something that was going to become significant, and it did. And we changed from just you and I recording podcasts whenever it was convenient to us to we've got a schedule. We have an audience. We deliver a live podcast with video every 2 weeks. Discord became the chat room that had been missing from the No Direction formula for almost a decade. And right at the right time that basically we've become the default Pathfinder Discord, to the point that the roommate that I had at PaizoCon, who I met over Discord, I don't think has any idea who I was. But I met him on the No Direction Discord.
I know. Speaking of which, 100 of you joined our chat room over the weekend. Welcome, new chatters. That's a whole lot of people all at once.
Expect to see some kind of invitation to introduce yourselves. In fact, I don't even know if we have an introduction subforum. Maybe it's about time because we're going to have a lot of people coming in. Yep, there we go. So yeah, that's something to look forward to because I am curious who all these people are who have discovered us for the first time, what they expect from us, what like how they found us. Although I think it's pretty obvious that it had to do with the stream that you ran at PaizoCon and nearly, I'm sure, fried your brain doing at some points.
Right. Oh boy, gosh. I do not deserve to get to be with such talented people that I get to interact with thanks to this network, including you. And I get to play in some of the most amazing role-playing games with my heroes thanks to this network. So it is a part of my life I will never want to have given up.
One of my favorite memories from the first time we talked about PaizoCon, you asked me on the episode where we were reviewing my PaizoCon experience, because you hadn't gone to one yet. You asked if GMs were using a lot of tablets. This was a new trend that you were curious if it had caught on.
Right. And I
did about how many GMs had tablets now.
I remember we put a set of review episodes where I was taking very first gen early tablets and e-readers, like the very first ones released, and it was doing this. I was like, does this one handle Paizo PDFs well? And can you use this? And now, of course, yes. But at the time, I was basically making a list of, okay, the Kindle does great, the iPad does okay, but you really want the third one. And that was before they could handle it. And now anything for $5 on eBay will do it.
Whoa, there are tablets for $5 on eBay?
I bet there are. I mean, good grief, there's enough.
A couple of extra tablets.
I think I paid $50. Amazon was doing a 3-pack of tablets for $80 a few days ago or a few weeks ago. So
T. Doher in chat is saying they're a noob. How can they find the chat on Discord?
Okay, so this is easy. See on the screen if you can. There's nodirectionpodcast.com. Just go to nodirectionpodcast.com and there's a Discord button that you can click on to get there. Now, because you're in chat, we're going to cheat and post the link in Discord chat here in just a second, unless somebody beats me to it. Vanessa beat me to it. And that's even with the stream delay. But thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much. And just click that. You'll be invited to our Discord, and you can hang out with us and all our fans. All the network staff hang out there all the time. That's how we sort of talk with each other, and we absolutely love communicating with our fans. There's a special section of the Discord reserved for our backers, and they do get sort of a VIP treatment there. We let them know about especially the insiders. They get to know about advanced stuff, and we of course rely on our backers for opinions on some of the decisions we make about the network, including the release order of the seminars. We let the backers tell us which seminars they wanted most to hear first.
Yeah, so the plan is to still release the seminars in order that they were recorded on our on the mainstream, but we are going to have special previews of some of them that go up on the Patreon. And that brings me to how we're going to change how we use Patreon. So Patreon has not been a success for us. It has allowed us to upgrade some equipment and to launch some new programs and ideas. But we're averaging about $300 a month, which is basically what we've been averaging since it launched. And I just feel like there's more potential there. And I'm going to take most of the blame because the Patreon, as it's set up, has a weird reward structure. It's based heavily on the idea that people want cards that it's a pun with parody or caricature art for us. Great art. It's fun play on words, but I don't know if that's the main thing that we could be offering, considering we don't offer any physical products. So having that as our one main offer, the longer we've been going with that being our main thing, completely discounting the fact that I've dropped the ball and I still haven't delivered on the original ones, but it just never felt like that is what we should be doing. So we're switching gears. We're going to be offering digital content similar to what we already offer, but it's going to be a little bit rougher. It's going to be a little different. The main content we offer on the podcast, on the website is going to be the same. It's going to be long form series like No Direction Beyond, the actual play podcast. If it's something that has multiple episodes and has a broad purpose, that's going to continue to be free. But we want to make it more fun to be a Patreon backer, so we're going to throw things up there like the recording of the In Servitude that we had at PaizoCon. Just fun little things that are going to be a little bit rougher, like the seminars that are going to go up on the Patreon are not going to have the beginning and end, where they're not going to have the background noises filtered like they will when they're eventually released, but it will be a fun early access for our patrons. And I even feel kind of mixed explaining this, because it does feel like I'm putting the onus on our listeners to be Patreon backers. And I don't like that, which is, of course, the main contradiction of being a content creator and an influencer who has a Patreon, and I just want to give everything away for free.
Yeah, I'm the same way. That's kind of why we got in this boat. I mean, yes. I haven't charged for a single product I've ever developed.
So yes, there's going to be a more regular schedule and more content that is just going to be considered bonus content. Like I'm finally going to put up Xavier's character sheet. That's going to go up on the Patreon, and things that are ancillary. Why do I feel like that's not right?
Ancillary. Things that are ancillary to the things that, if you are a fan of what we put on the website, you will get a little bit more of that stuff and a little different variety of it on the Patreon. This is something that I definitely... What's that? Dungeon Novice makes a point in chat that we could release things early on Patreon. We are doing that with some content. For instance,
we record our main shows live.
Right. But there is some content that will be early access on Patreon and then eventually released to everybody, like Stellar Zero, the introduction to how the crew got put together for Stellar. So the goal right now, the most immediate thing on our plate, is getting PaizoCon coverage out there. And then once that's, on the track and it's things that are going to take care of themselves, the next is to, I combined ancillary and auxiliary. Thank you, Jay Franklin, to that 3000. I love you, 3000, Jay Franklin. So once we start getting rolling on PaizoCon and
ideally before Gen Con hits, we are going to fix up the Patreon and make it something that's actually fun and part of the community, but not a mandatory part. But if you are part of that part of the community, it's more fun than it has been.
Right.
Ty Deckman says Patreon only actual play podcast would be good. Probably not an entire actual play podcast, but something like we discussed a few episodes ago, the Mimips 11 type thing, where it's like it's set in the adventurous world and features many members of the adventurous cast, but it's not actually part of the adventurous storyline. That's the type of thing I could see becoming a semi-regular feature of the Patreon. We need to record one of those before we can even see how sustainable that is.
And a lot of this also, if you are a backer or will become a backer, let us know what you want, the kind of stuff you want to see coming from us that you would like as rewards that is feasible for us to deliver. But we do not want to, we absolutely do not want to make our listeners who can't be patrons feel like they're losing out on content that they normally would have gotten. So we don't want to make things that are required to understand our existing actual play podcasts like that.
Now, I think I'd like to talk about what episodes 201 to 204 or 205 are going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be working very closely with Paizo to basically make this, it's going to be a little bit less news and a little bit more, we'll call it 2E type episodes. Mm-hmm. We're not working for Paizo. It's not sponsored episodes, but it's definitely 2E is the big news. We are both now on board for 2E, and Gen Con is coming up with the official release of 2E. So we're going to have, we talked briefly, so I cannot officially release it, but we've got some fun potential series that are going to go across the next 4 episodes and going to make it really like a package deal of when you've heard all 4 of these episodes, you are getting a different experience than your normal No Direction experience. Yeah. We're going to have some fun fun interviews with members of the design team and Paizo staff. We are probably also going to fit in a couple of other reviews that we've already kind of committed to. We're going to see exactly how that fits in as we go along. Mm-hmm. But the main thing is that episodes 201 to episodes 204 are going to be about getting you as informed and potentially as excited about 2E as possible, I guess, or at least getting on the same page as Param and I.
Yep. The way I see it and the way I'm going to try to negotiate with these with Paizo is I'm a fan and I'm hyped for PF2 because it's about to come out. I want to arrange for the type of content that I want to know about this system before it comes out. And because I'm a greedy fan and want to know everything, you will get to know everything that I'm able to squeeze out of Paizo. Me and Ryan are able to squeeze out of Paizo.
Now, I do want to point out we will not be recording on the 12th or next week. So this episode is off by a week because we took the Wednesday before PaizoCon off because, please, we needed it.
I was in an airplane. I can't record the episode from an airplane.
And so technically the originally scheduled next episode was going to be the 5th, but we decided to do it a week early because, PaizoCon, we were both super hyped.
So on the 5th is going to be No Direction Beyond. We're going to interview Lou Agresta about Grimmerspace. So you will want to check that out. That's going to be pretty exciting. Yeah,
Grimmerspace is doing really well on Kickstarter, and it's a very exciting, game. But they are also sponsors, so I have to say that they didn't pay me to say that, but they are paying us to advertise on the network.
They are paying us to run an ad on this episode.
This episode?
Yep.
I thought it was just the Beyond episodes.
Nope. They bought by date, so.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
We'll let you handle that. You let me know when it's time to run the ad.
All right, hold on. I gotta go to the No Direction Beyond button.
All right, while you're doing that, I'll continue to talk about the schedule. So PaizoCon coverage will likely start on June 10th. May's done by then.
So the advanced civilizations of the Grimmerspace have withstood whatever the universe has thrown at them. But as a group of godlike sorcerers invade with magic at their fingertips, their technological galaxy faces horrors it's never seen before. Iron GM Games, with creative developer Sean Astin and the best writers in role-playing, bring Hollywood-style sci-fi horror to you with Grimmerspace, a setting and adventure collection compatible with the Starfinder role-playing game. Grimmerspace launches on Kickstarter May 22nd, but you don't have to wait to get a taste of it.
Download the first Grimmer Space adventure, Abattoir 8 by Richard Pett on drivethrurpg.com or opengamingstore.com for free today.
It's a dangerous galaxy, Grimmer. Maybe you could save it, but in Grimmer Space, heroics have a price.
Vanessa, yeah, it's an audio-only ad, but I had to go to the No Direction Beyond frame to play it because that's where I put the key on my macros here.
Gotcha. So, as we were saying, June 5th will be the next episode of No Direction Beyond. It will have Lou Agresta talking about Grimmer Space, and you'll probably also talk with James and Alex about your PaizoCon experience and the Starfinder news. You'll go into more detail there.
Oh, yeah. We've got a lot of Starfinder, at least Starfinder Society especially. We've got a lot to talk about.
PaizoCon seminar coverage will start June 10th is the target date, and the plan is to release 2 episodes a day, similar to we've done in the past. Are we setting up its own RSS stream for that? Or
yes, we
how
will
is that
have.
going to work?
We will have an RSS stream for that to work. It will still be in the main stream, but we're going to set up RSS streams for the individual shows here very shortly, so that you can subscribe to just the content you want and more easily find the content you want to listen to at the exact time you want to listen to it.
The next No Direction live recording, episode 201, will be on June 19th, which will be the start of this March to 2nd edition. June 12th may have something. We have toyed with some ideas. Param, I don't think you're ready to announce anything, right?
Not yet, no.
Okay,
But
so
we will talk.
keep an eye
about
on the
things.
Facebook page and the Discord, and pay specifically close attention to any events we plan for the 12th.
Right.
And then after that, we're back on our regular schedule. Param, I think we're about ready to wrap things up.
I think we are too. I do want to give some shout outs.
Go for it.
First, I want to shout out to Aaron from Paizo. He helped coordinate with all this and did an amazing job. And we talked at Paizo about different things. And I look forward to working with him in the future. And you will all reap the benefit of our improved relationship, especially if we get to do all those cool interviews. Also, if we get to do that card game thing we hinted at earlier.
Did we hint at it?
We hinted at last episode.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Because I want to see what the new card game looks like. Don't you? And I didn't get to play it.
I do. Very
I didn't
much.
get to
I'm
play it
looking
at
forward to it.
PaizoCon.
I regret not playing it. Oh, there we go. I have 3 PaizoCon regrets.
No.
Making a joke with that guy that doesn't have sense of humor. I think he does. Not picking a fighter in Luis's game. Not playing the card game. And that's it. I've topped it.
Jay Franken says, all no new seminars till the 10th.
Unless you're a backer, then the ones that have been specifically called out in the backer chat or the backer channel on Discord, we'll throw those up a little earlier.
With permission, Ryan, I can slam out for Saturday. I can slam out the banquet because I've already got that separated.
Saturday, though? Sure.
Well,
sure. Okay. Yeah, that'll be the kickoff, and then people might have to wait a couple of days or a week for us to then start the regular releases. But sure, yeah, launching with the banquet a little early or as soon as possible, that makes sense.
And the only reason
So
I'm
there you
saying
go,
that is I have
Jay
it
Franklin.
sitting here. Because we recorded it separately, I have it right here, right ready to go. And I will edit out the infamous preamble. All right.
Was that it for your shoutouts?
No, I want to
ahead.
shout out to our crew. Vanessa, Alex, and Randall. James, Lauren, and Vanessa are going to be our Gen Con crew, and you'll get your shout out after Gen Con. But Randall, Vanessa, and Alex, you guys and gals went way above the Call of Duty to help us out. I know that me and Ryan did a lot of work, but that would not have been possible without you all with us every step of the way. Thank you all so much for helping out. Everything about PaizoCon's coverage is thanks to your assistance. You all rock.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.